Evening and welcome to the May meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Niskayuna. Going to ask Linda to call the roll, please.
Mr. Hoke,
Here.
Mr. Latif,
Here.
Mr. Dolman,
Here.
Mr. Daly,
Here.
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mr. Antonikowski.
Here.
Chairperson Frary.
Here. Hopefully, everybody had the chance to review the minutes from the, I believe it was April 19th, 2023 meeting. Are there any motions to change, correct any items regarding those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the April 19th, 2023 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second? Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Latif,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Abstain.
Mr. Daly.
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Antonikowski.
Yes.
Chairperson Frary.
Yes, so those minutes are accepted. I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Keith Frary. I'm the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting. Just a little information for you. What we're going to do is we're going to call the cases one by one. We're going to ask you to come forward to the podium. Please understand this meeting is being recorded, and we're going to need to have you talk into the microphone, give your name, your address, and then present your need for a variance. You will note that this board is bound by certain criteria that we're required to inquire about, satisfy, whether we grant or deny your variance request. Some of the questions you may hear may seem a little confusing or strange. Please understand that the questions we ask are directly related to that criteria. So if you're confused in any way or you have questions about that, by all means, bring it up. But that's why we ask the questions, and that's what we do. Let's call the first case.
Appeal of Ronald Walsh for a variance from Section 220-4 and Section 220-25B1A of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskayuna as it applies to the property at 2100 Alexis Avenue, Niskayuna, New York, located in the R1 low-density residential zoning district, to maintain a 6-foot fence which exceeds the height limit in the side yard. Section 220-4 states for corner lots, each street line shall be considered a front lot line. The property fronts on 2 streets, Balltown Road and Alexis Ave. Section 220-25B1A permits the maximum height for fences located in the front and side yards to be 4 feet as constructed. A 6-foot high fence is located in the side yard. Therefore, a 2-foot fence height variance is required. 11 notices were mailed, 0 responses.
Good evening. Give us your name and address, please.
Ronald Walsh, 2100 Lexus Ave.
Mr. Walsh, could you please tell us what you're seeking in terms of your variance and any efforts that have been made to negate the need for a variance or to minimize the need for a variance?
So the whole process took about 2 years when I first came to this board and received the variance for a 6-foot fence. COVID hit. Supply chain was horrible. Price of my fence went from $8,000 to $14,000. So I ended up doing most of it myself. On the left side, looking at my property, the fence is 6 feet. I brought it forward 12 feet. My footprint to my house is not the same as my neighbor's who sits closer to the street. So I came straight across, which violated the one rule because it was not off exactly the back corner. I don't know if I can submit pictures to you guys. If I want to do that.
Absolutely. If you have pictures, we can make them part of the record.
Yes. So I just give them to you guys.
Sure. Do you have one set or
I
just,
got a set for everybody.
okay, if you pass them, please, that would be great.
You're welcome. Just so I can at least show
Thank you.
what I'm talking about. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And let's please make sure and make these a part of the record if we can. Thank you.
So, as you can see in the first picture, my home is on the corner lot. My back corner does not, of my house, my footprint is different from my neighbors. They put in a beautiful white fence. As you can see on the right side of my house, that was the first portion of my fence I put in. That was due to not being able to finish it because of supply chain issues. And unfortunately, Google hasn't updated its maps. But the second picture is the actual 18 feet of fence, which violates the rule. I put in a double gate straight across. It's 18 feet there. I moved it 12 feet forward. The third picture is the picture from the street. Obviously, you can't tell exactly where my fence is, any passerby. And my neighbors to the left are the only ones that would affect or could possibly notice. And, they have no issue with that. I think they would have responded if they had. I speak to them regularly. There was no issue. The fourth picture is just a picture to show how I came straight across in my neighbor's fence in comparison. And the last picture is just me sticking my head out the bathroom window upstairs and taking an aerial view for you. So I violated the rule because when I put the fence in, it was 6 feet off the corner. I moved it forward. And I guess it should have been 4 feet. And I just continued on, went 6 feet straight across. So my problem is a self-created problem. I apologize. So that's what brings me here today.
Laura, can you give us the procedural history of where we're at with this, starting with the initial granting, and there was a granting and a denial of a variance, and just walk the board through that, please.
Sure. In 2019, the applicant came to the zoning board and had not installed any fence, and his property abuts Balltown Road, and the zoning board discussed the different areas of the fencing with him. And at that board, he verbally withdrew his request for the 6-foot fencing on the south side or left side, as you're looking at the house, of the request in 2019. The remaining part of the fence was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that was for a 6-foot fence in the front yard along Balltown Road. So as the building permit was issued following that meeting, it was supposed to be a 6-foot fence along Balltown Road, which was allowed on that 2019 variance, and then this side of the fence was supposed to be in compliance with the code. I believe.
And in terms of, there were a couple of extensions or a couple of.
Renewals.
that
And
were-
upon the last inspection, I believe the inspector noted that the fence was in the incorrect location. And because you guys never took action on it in 2019, we allowed it to come back to you.
Okay. You realize that when you came in front of us the first time, your request for a variance for the 6-foot fence on Balltown, you understand the 2 front yard issue?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And the variance that you requested on the Balltown Road, I'll call it, side of your house was granted.
Correct.
So you were able to put up a 6-foot fence along that side. The portion, and I remember this case because it was very near the neighborhood I used to live in when I first moved to Niskayuna. The other portion of your fence, which you wanted to take in what is now its current position, we discussed with you and you agreed to move that back to the rear corner of your house so a variance would not be needed.
Correct.
And then when you went to actually build the fence, you built it in the middle of the house.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the exact middle, but yes, I moved it.
In other words,
It's a self-created issue.
in other words, you didn't put it in a position that did not require a variance as we had agreed.
Right.
You put it back to the place or approximate place you initially wanted it.
Well, yes, I did come and say I want to move it back. That was supposed to be 4 feet, and I went straight across to 6 feet.
So my question to you is, did you ever approach the building department or anyone there about the fact that what you were ultimately ended up building was not in compliance with what you knew to be the code?
No,
Why not?
I only came and asked to move it this way, and that's when it was supposed to be 4 feet. 2.5 years later, whatever it was, after I extended twice, but I couldn't get the material, I went straight across with 6 feet. Should I have come back and asked the zoning board to change that? I didn't know that I could. I wasn't sure, yes.
So tell me, if you would, please, why it was necessary to put the fence in the present position versus where you had agreed to put it initially.
So as you can see from picture 1, my property is offset by my neighbors by probably, I don't know, if I was to guess, 30 feet. So to go straight across there made absolutely 0 sense. So I came up a little further to 12 feet off the corner of the house and went straight across.
So it was purely an aesthetic thing.
Yeah.
It looked nicer the other way.
In my opinion, it looked a lot better, but also gave me a little more yard, so to speak, before you hit my garden box. And able to get through the future development in the backyard.
Why did you put up a fence in the first place?
Well, we have a couple dogs. Also, I had spoke about, my son having the ADHD and all of that, back when we first came to the zoning board. We didn't feel that we could accomplish the mission with, trees or, arborvitaes, let's say. A lot of deer run up and down those streets and eat those trees. So that was the original reason.
And I understand, I remember the safety factor for Balltown Road, et cetera, but you could still achieve the purpose you wanted with the fence at the rear corner of the house, right?
Coming straight across
Where it was supposed to be.
Yes, I could have achieved that, yes.
So again, purely it looks better in the place that it's at now.
Well, if you could look at page 2, it looks great. I don't,
Unfortunately, that's not one of the criteria that I'm supposed to use. Gee, it looks great.
it looks great though.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions by the board?
I just have a point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm still unclear on why this matter wasn't resolved the first time. The applicant, and I know Laura spoke to this, but it's still not, I'm still not sure, or I don't understand. The applicant previously agreed to put the fence in a certain location. It's not in that location. Why is this now back before us?
Well, Alina can speak. He actually withdrew his request, so the zoning board never took action on it.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. We had a conversation at the zoning board meeting, informed the applicant that by moving it back to as we routinely do with 6-foot fences, that by moving the fence back to the rear corner of the house, he didn't need a variance and he could proceed without one without our vote.
Correct. And that was
And that was the agreement that was made.
And that's also consistent with what we frequently do as a condition of minimizing the need for the variance that we are granting. So it seems like the matter, it's kind of like an exchange for resolution of the overall application at that time that's now being brought back for a second bite of the same apple. That's my perception of it.
Elena, did you want to weigh in there?
I mean, I don't really have too much more to add. Laura and I had the discussion. I don't necessarily disagree with anything that the zoning board is saying, but in light of the fact that the applicant had agreed to voluntarily withdraw and that the decision wasn't actually rendered to grant or deny the variance, we felt as though he should be allowed at least the opportunity to come back if he chose. Laura did explain the other options that were available to him. But if he had chose to actually have a decision rendered, since
So because there was never a decision rendered, the decision,
it was a voluntary decision on the
the
applicant's
decision
part.
was to let him come back before us and get a decision.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions by the board?
If I may be heard.
Please, Mr. Green.
I'm not saying that what has been said is not correct, but what I'm saying is the information that I would wish to serve based upon my general memory of this. I do remember this gentleman in my contemporaneous handwritten notes at the time that this matter was heard before this board was, I have a handwritten note, move to grant the amended application. Amended to move fence from back to rear corner. Seconded, variance granted by a 4-3 vote. So I just share that with everyone. Not to say what wasn't said was what happened, but to just provide my recollection and my notes with everyone for their consideration for what they feel it may be worth.
Other questions by the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, sir, tell me from the rear and the back of your house, how far are you from the back of the house?
About 12 feet.
12 feet. And tell me the width of the side of your house altogether.
The point where that fence is 18 feet.
18. So you got 6 feet still open in the front for the yard, right? And then the fence goes 12 feet to the rear of the house.
So, right, so the rear corner of the house to where the current fence is 12 feet.
12 feet. Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you have on the side of your house any doors that you need access to the inside of the fence? Because it looks like in one of the pictures, you have a garage there,
Yes, I do.
and that's not considered, is that garage considered part of your front of the house and rear of the house or not? Because it looks like it's connected to your house.
The garage is connected to the house.
This picture you handed us,
Yes, that's from me standing on the street.
oh, that's on the
If you're
street.
Walking your dog or if you're a passerby.
All right, so
that's
this
how-
garage is disconnected from your house.
That garage is connected, yes.
It's connected.
Yes.
Okay. So how far from the front of this garage to that fence, if you don't mind, if you have an approximate?
Um, 35 feet maybe.
So if you were to take the front of the garage to that fence right there, so we're talking about 26 feet about?
From the front corner of the garage.
Right. And the reason I ask, because I want to see what the percentage of, from the front of that garage to the back of the house.
Yeah.
About approximate.
26 sounds probably good to where the corner of the front garage to where my fence currently is about 26 feet.
Okay,
That would be from the corner of the garage to where the chimney stack.
okay. And the front of your house or the garage actually to the road, how far is that? And is this Bolton Road or Alexis Road?
The house faces Alexis.
Alexis, okay. So the front of your house, basically, we know we have two front, but the front of for the garage is Alexis.
Yes.
And which one is the side to Bolton? Is it where the fence is?
The side of Balltown is where I came and got the 6-foot variance to come out off the corner, 6 feet, come around.
But where's this one? The one is this going to the,
The 18 foot?
yeah.
No, it's between my house and the neighbor's house.
in the neighbor's house?
Yep.
Okay.
It abuts their fence.
Okay, so if we go to the neighbor's house and I'm looking at the neighbor's house,
That's his fence.
That's his fence.
Yep,
And
mine.
you're inside of his fence.
Yes.
So if you were to put it on the outside, then you're gonna go almost to the front of your house.
That would bring it forward another 8 to 12 feet, by 10 to 12 feet forward, if I was to go directly across.
Okay. So your neighbor, that's not the rear of their house, that fence?
That fence where it comes off the corner, yes.
It is.
Yep, if you can. the
Okay, I
last
see
page-
it.
The last page better shows.
Yep, I see it.
Each situation, so.
Okay. So the rear of your neighbor's house comes straight to yours,
to our property.
to your property, and then you went inside of your neighbor's fence. How many feet did you go there? From their,
From their corner,
yeah, about,
9 feet, if each panel's 8 feet.
okay. Okay, that's it. That's for me. I got all my questions answered.
Any other questions by the board? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on the variance? Hearing none, is there anyone that would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I remember this applicant very well. Reason why we went with the 6-foot fence was because he's got small children. Am I correct in saying that, sir?
Yeah. I have a-
And everybody knows Fall Town Road is a busy, busy street. I don't believe he did this maliciously. I think he did it maybe not thinking the proper way, and it happened. And it's not going to be an environment against the town. And for those few reasons, I would approve the applicant.
You have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Hoke,
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote no on the application, or on the motion. The 6-foot fences are something that comes before this board on a regular basis. And we look at these, we look at the impact that they have on the community. And in your particular circumstance, sir, you were already granted a variance. And from my perspective, the benefit could be achieved through an alternate means. We identified that the last time that you were present before the board, because we identified a location that the fence could be put that you agreed to. So I believe the benefit can be achieved through other means. I agree with you that the fence looks nice as installed right now.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily think that's dispositive, unfortunately, of your application. I don't think that because it looks good, I don't think it creates an undesirable change in the neighborhood. But I do believe, as we have routinely held, that 6-foot fences and exactly the placement that you have the fence frequently comes before the board. People are requesting exactly what you're seeking, and we deny them on a regular basis. So I do believe that the request was substantial, although I appreciate in your, from your perspective, not coming before the zoning board all the time, that maybe it doesn't seem substantial, but from my perspective, I believe it to be substantial. I don't believe that it'll have negative physical or environmental effects, but as Mr. Walsh has admitted, this was completely self-created, and he was aware that when he put the fence that he wasn't allowed to put it there. So for those reasons and balancing those factors, that is my thought process in voting against the present motion.
Mr. Lataif,
It is an unfortunate, but I do have to vote no on the motion. And again, once we give this and we allow it, we set precedent for other neighbors in the neighborhood And what Mr. Hoax specified about that a lot of people come in front of us and they want that fence. And it looks like to me the applicant is willing to put it back to the rear of the house. But I agree with the applicant. It does look good. And for all these reasons, I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Dolman?
This one's pretty close for me, but on the whole, I'm going to vote no, and I'm going to explain why. Can the benefit be achieved by?
You seconded the motion.
Yes. I seconded the motion to vote. I didn't necessarily for my support for the motion.
I think that if you have voted to second the motion, that indicates that you are voting yes. Counsel?
Usually that is the case. However, I do think that if there's a motion to put forward to approve and then there's discussion on the motion, if the vote changes due to that discussion, then that's allowable.
That's fine.
I don't think that this creates an undesirable change in the neighborhood. We have held significantly that this is a substantial variance in the past. I don't see any particular reason for that this would cause an adverse environmental impact. And as admitted, this is a self-created problem. So on the balance, it was close for me, but I am going to vote no.
Mr. Daly?
I'm going to vote yes, for the reasons I stated.
Mr. Green?
I remember the first time around, and I probably, if I didn't, it was tough for me the first time around too. And the second time around, it's tough again for me too. But I'm constrained here for the reasons stated by some of my fellow ZBA folks, particularly Mr. Hoke. So I wish I could, but I can't. I'm sorry. I'm voting no, sir.
Mr. Antonikowski?
I'm voting no as well, for the reasons stated. I do believe that there was an agreement made to push that, and the plan was to originally push that fence back without the town, the benefit of the town weighing back in on that. And having done that on your own course of action, my vote is no for this.
Understood.
Chairperson Frary?
I'm going to vote no as well. The motion fails. So the point we're at now is we need another motion, an alternative motion. I'm going to make it. I'm going to vote that we deny the variance request. I think Mr. Hoke has sufficiently stated a great deal of it, but let me be clear. While I appreciate what you did and your efforts to make it look nice, essentially the agreement that was made with this board the first time around was that you were going to, in exchange for not needing a variance, you were going to bring it within the code and put it back to the rear corner of the house. I realized there were delays. I realized there were cost overruns. I don't want to forget the fact that we granted the variance on the other side, which I think was the right thing to do. We also eliminated and negated the need for a vote last time on the fence in the middle of the house in exchange for the move. The fence was not placed there. I understand the decision was made to put this back in front of the board. However, I think because of that agreement, because of the fact that that was what was agreed to at that time, and for the reasons that Mr. Hoke has stated, this board routinely gets 6-foot fences in front of us. This is, in my estimation, does not fall within the criteria that we have used previously to grant a variance and allow it to be someplace other than up to code. And we have done that on occasion. It's been rare. We are going to, as far as I'm concerned, we need to uphold the precedent that we have set. So for those reasons, as well as the reasons that Mr. Hoke has stated, I move that we deny the variance. No. Is there a second to the motion to deny the variance?
I'll second it for all the reasons stated.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Latife,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
No,
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Ferrari.
Yes, I'm sorry, sir, but your variance has been denied.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's my last resort, so I have to try it. I'm not gonna move the fence. I'm probably gonna take the sawzall and cut it down to 4 feet. Each post I put in with 2 bags of concrete. I ain't trying to dig that up, so. Anyways,
Understood.
thank you. I understand everybody's decision. And, you
Thank-
have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Call the next case, please.
Appealed by Benjamin Twait for a variance from Section 220-25B1A of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskiuna as it applies to the property at 2041 Morrow Ave, Niskiuna, New York, located in the R2 Medium Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a 6-foot fence which exceeds the height limit in the side yard. Section 220-25B1A permits the maximum height for fences located in the front and side yards to be 4 feet. As proposed, a 6-foot high fence will be located in the side yard. Therefore, a 2-foot fence height variance is required. 7 notices were mailed, 0 responses.
Hello. Will you give us your name and your address and then tell us a little bit about your variance?
2041 Morrow Ave. And I'm looking for a 2-foot variance on a fence that's gonna be in the side yard. As you can see, with the pictures that we have, I'm replacing a fence that was already there. I moved into the house, a few years ago, and the fence is, deteriorated, and we're looking to replace it. And I feel like I just want to replace it with what's already there, 6 feet, and my neighbors, as you can see, have, a fence in the front yard that, connect to, anything like, fence in backyard for them.
How long have you lived in the house?
About, it'll be, there's my son, be and a half, and we moved in and he's one, so.
Okay. And was as I'm looking at the photographs you have, the white, what appears to be white vinyl fence is your neighbor's?
That, yeah, that's what we're talking about. That was, that photo was taken from my.
And so the picket type fence or the wooden fence is the fence you're looking to replace?
Yeah.
Was that fence in place where it's at now when you bought the house?
Yeah.
Laura, do we have any evidence of any variances being granted to the neighbor?
We do not. We sent the building inspector out to investigate, and Linda just informed me he was looking at the wrong house. So we still have to determine exactly what the status is of the adjacent property.
Okay. Okay, questions by the board?
Just a quick question. When you moved in, there was any discussion with, because usually when you buy a house, you go over what you need to replace, like a shingle on the roof, stuff. Was any discussion when you bought the house about the fence that needs replacement? Did they tell you if they ever got a permit for 6-foot fence? Did you,
No, but I know the previous owners that lived in the house were only there for 8 months.
8 months?
I don't know if they had done any improvements to the house,
Okay.
so, no, that was not the neighbor to the house. And that was also, the other wasn't part of the building, by the inspection.
Okay, so I'm looking at that picture, the first picture you're showing, this is, the first picture you're showing us. The fence seems like about maybe a couple feet. Is this the front or the back? This is the front, okay. And that a vinyl there, or is that,
My neighbor's is vinyl, the fence that I'm replacing is wood.
okay, so where is this door here? I'm looking at this one. Where, this door?
Garage door.
Oh, that's the view from your house.
That's the view, so that was just a picture from my bedroom looking at my neighbor's house, so you could see the fence that I was connecting into.
Okay.
Mr. Twait, did you, when you purchased the house, did you ever have a survey done of the property?
No,
Are you certain that fence is on your property?
that I'm not certain, it may be something that's because the bad side.
It's facing you.
My fence.
Okay,
And
yes,
my
makes sense.
Discussing with my neighbors, I've discussed it with them that I would point out in the first two times to neighbors. They do not say, this is our fence, not your fence. So,
I guess one of the goals that you have in replacing the fence and the manner in which you're replacing it is that you'd like to tie into the vinyl fence that your neighbor has installed, correct? And if that fence turns out not to be in compliance and that fence has to come down at some point in the future, that would impact your overall project, correct?
it- I don't.
I think what he's asking is, so now that we've seen your neighbor's 6-foot fence in his side yard, it is possible that he might be required to remove or lower his 6-foot fence, which would mean your tie-in would be a little bit weird at that point.
So I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess the question, if your goal, part of your goal is to tie into his fence, and we've just learned tonight that from our understanding, there's been no variances granted for his fence. It would appear that his fence is out of compliance as well. Is that correct, Laura?
But Laura,
That is correct.
if this fence was before the zoning, then it's a different story, because it looks like a very old fence.
No, we're talking about the white
So we're
vinyl.
talking
Oh, the
about
white
the white
vinyl.
We're talking about the
vinyl.
white vinyl one
Yeah.
next door.
And we have a building permit for that white vinyl. Oh, we don't. We have no building permit for that white vinyl.
The image I
Yeah, but the
remember
white vinyl
is
is
for a
not in
rear
front of
yard.
us, right?
fence.
Yeah, we got a building permit for a rear yard fence and it didn't show these panels, but we believe that somewhere between the rear yard fence and now, these panels were installed without a building permit.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As I look at this picture and according to my fellow board members' concerns, it appears to me that that wooden fence, it might not actually be on the applicant's property. Typically, it's been my experience that the decorative side faces the owner, which when looking at this picture, I go, huh,
No,
no?
Code requires the decorative side to face the neighbor.
Oh, whoops.
Sir, did the vinyl fence, has that been put in since you've lived there?
No, that. My neighbors made- Yeah, my neighbors made no changes to their fence. I definitely did not want to throw that.
Here's the concern I think you've heard expressed here, and it's a legitimate concern. We don't know the 6-foot fence that you're looking to replace. You don't know, we don't know whether that's on your property or his property. So any action to replace that would be difficult, even though he said nothing. He may be a crafty neighbor who says, I'm going to get my fence replaced. So I guess my concern is it may make some sense to find out whose fence that actually is. And I believe that as has been expressed, there could be an issue with his 6-foot vinyl fence as it exists, because it's clearly out of code. So rather than have you go to the time and expense of putting up a brand-new fence that either A, may not be yours, or B, some of it may be out of code or be altered in some way if his has to come down, that it may be something, do you have some means or ability to find out where your property line is?
I mean, I would have to contact the surveyor in order to determine that. I would assume, like, the only plot plan that I was given was when I emailed, to go to the
When you bought the house, was there some type usually there's a legal description of your property, and oftentimes, as silly as it may sound, there's pins in the corners of your property and those kind of things.
There may be like surveyor, and I haven't.
I'm not telling you what to do, but those are the concerns that I would have. I'm not sure that we can grant you a variance to replace this fence if it's not yours.
Come up and speak.
I'm sorry.
Can
No,
you come up and speak to the
absolutely.
microphone?
Come on up, both of you. And just tell us your name and your address, just so we have it on the record.
Hi, I'm Samantha Tweet. I live at 2041 Marl Ave.
And introduce your son, please.
And this is Brooks Tweet. He also lives at 2041 Marl Ave. When we bought the house, we were under the assumption that the fence was ours, as told by our realtor and the previous owners. When we bought the house, we raised our minimum issues to $5,000. So at the time, the fence had been falling in. We had said, oh, we'll save money to replace the fence already. At this point, our biggest safety concern is that the fence, which we assume is ours, is currently falling into our yard. And with having a 2-year-old that runs around and a dog, our concern is that if we keep letting this fence go, A, the fence is gonna fall over on top of him and cause him a head injury, which I work in the pediatric ICU and I'm really not trying to take care of him at my own job. And we have a dog that also runs around, and but she's small, it'll fall on top of her. If our biggest concern is tying into our neighbor's front fence that violates code, we don't have to tie in
Well,
to
no,
a fence.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, that's our biggest concern. is that
And
our fence
and a
is all
legitimate
around
concern, obviously.
Right, so, and it's because we're only seeking the variance for the 20 feet that's in our side yard, so we're looking for the people variance, like, is in our rear yard, and we're looking to get this 6-foot fence, so I understand the concern that it might not be our fence.
So you're gonna go ahead and do the rest of your yard with a 6-foot fence?
Yes, there's already a fence, we just we were just looking to replace that. We were planning on adding 4-foot fence to where the rear of our house is to that yard, the fence in our yard. There was already a fence there, leading on the other side of our house that was already there.
How big is that?
That is 6 foot as well.
So Mr. Twait, the whole reason you want to come up and you need that variance is to tie into that. So if you're not going to tie in because of the issues that were raised today, you wouldn't even need the variance. You can still go ahead and replace the rest of your fence without the need for a variance at all.
Correct. I mean,
But as you've heard, it has to go to the rear corner of your house.
correct.
Okay.
And then you still would preserve the right to, in the future, if you wanted in the future to come forward and ask for a variance for that section of the fence that the fence that we're looking at right now that you're requesting the variance for, once there's a determination as to what's going on with your neighbor's fence.
Correct. And so,
So in other words, it wouldn't affect your wife's legitimate concerns about safety.
no, and I understand that, yes, we're trying to tie into my neighbor's fence, who we now learned, might not be in compliance, unfortunately. So yes, but,
You can put a 4-foot fence around the whole yard.
I'm,
You can put a 6-foot fence from the rear corners of your house all around your backyard.
Right.
You just, so
Or you can transition from a 4 to a 6-foot fence.
Right, no, I understand that. I guess like, so, if I, cause like what's gonna end up happening is, if we don't get the variance, cause like my neighbors have 2 kids and a dog, so I can't take down the fence that I have here, as into their fence, because that would then make their yard no longer fenced in, to keep their, dogs and things. So I would go to, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I have 4 panels that I wouldn't touch, and the rest I would, so I would have 4 panels in the front of my house that are left like this, and the rest would be new fence, and then I would end up having, 4 foot from across the rear of my house. With the fence in, have a, 6 foot gate, but.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering whether it'd be appropriate to consider tabling this matter until there was a resolution or we had more information on the neighbor's fence.
That's an option. I think the concern that the applicant has is the safety issue of the fence.
That safety, and I plan on doing the fence myself and with me and my father-in-law, and just with my schedule, like, it is a timing thing with Memorial Day coming up. I have, 7 days off. I'm able to complete the project. Other than that, I work all week. I have like every other weekend off, so it's hard to find time to get the job done. And with it being the fence, I feel like I have to kind of complete it in one. I can maintain the fence that I have 100 years ago.
Mr. Chairman, question for Laura. If we were to approve this and it turned out to be it's not on this property, then what happened there?
So actually the building department doesn't locate lot lines
No?
and it would be a civil issue. He's representing on his building permit that his house is 30 feet away from the lot line and that he's installing a fence 30 feet away from his home.
Okay,
So according to our code, then he's in compliance and the fence is on his property. If a survey does show in the future that it's off, it's civil. And potentially like, his neighbor could comply him to move it off or they could come to some kind of, but as far as what is being presented to the zoning board, I believe that it's, at least in the building permit application, it's showing this on his property.
okay. Thank you, Laura.
Any other questions by the board?
I'd like to, emphasize something. You don't know if you own that property.
Correct.
And let's hypothetically say you do all that work and it's on your neighbor's property. And now he tells you to move it because it's his property. You would have to move it. So what I would suggest, I'm not telling you what to do. I would suggest you get it surveyed and then come back to us. All right? You save yourself a lot of grief.
Right.
He might be the nicest guy in the world, right? You don't know. Okay? Okay.
Any other questions by the board? Sir, would you like to proceed?
With,
Your request for a variance.
I would like to proceed, if, it does. And well, then I would like to proceed and I would like to ask one question. I'd like to proceed, if I proceed with the variance, can I go get my plot surveyed and to verify that it is on my property? And let's say if it wasn't, I would then have to resubmit my plan with updated, dimensions for my permit?
No, the issue that you're seeking is to be able to put a 6-foot fence in the side yard. Okay?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's assumed that even if you survey it, putting a 6-foot fence in your side yard on your property versus replacing this where it stands, which isn't on your property, it doesn't affect the requested variance. You get the variance, you can put the fence up 6 inches from this fence if you want. That's what we're saying. The concern is if you proceed, take that fence down, put another fence up in its place, and it's not on your property, that's the issue.
Okay, I guess I do have one other question. If I proceed with the variance and then it's determined that like my neighbor's fence isn't in compliance, is that like with, or the variance is denied, like, I guess, would I be able, like, let's say
That's your neighbor. Your neighbor is going to have to deal with either taking down or moving their fence or making it a 4-foot fence. If you tie into the corner of your neighbor's fence, assuming this is on your yard and his has to come down, you have a variance to put your 6-foot, let's say your variance is granted, to put your 6-foot fence up, but where it ends, that's where your issue begins. Because it's not going to tie into his fence. His fence may have to go to 4 feet, it may have to come out entirely or be moved back. At that point in time, you would have to make the decision to get a possible second variance to bring it across to the house, or just terminate it there, but that's not going to serve your purposes. Or put a 4-foot fence over to your house. I assume that's across your driveway, right? That's the issue that you're going to be presented with.
And then, Mr. Chairman, just so the applicant's aware, in the event that his application were denied, that would be a final resolution of the application.
So.
He wouldn't be
Correct.
able to come back
Only
at that
get one
point.
bite at the apple.
Correct.
Okay,
For specifically this variance.
Right, that's gonna be my next question, like, if my, so I go, let's say I go ahead with variance and I do get denied, but then my neighbor's fence is in compliance, like, because it's 4 feet and you can see through the top 2 feet or whatever, I can't then come back and ask for the variance again to then get that 6 feet to time to a 6-foot fence that they might have.
Correct.
You can only ask for the same variance once.
You don't have to see variance.
I think it's safe to say that if there's no variance that's been granted for that 6-foot vinyl fence, something's going to have to happen with it, assuming it's investigated.
So, Mr. Tway, that's why I suggested, that was my thought process in suggesting to table it to find out, get us a little bit more information, so that we'd be in a better position to, act on everything in a more uniform approach. But you have I think what the chairman said, you have an absolute right to go forward with the application tonight, if that's what you choose to do. But there's a certain degree of risk associated with that.
Let me ask you a question. You're trying to secure your backyard for your son, for your dog. Are you bringing your fence across to link to your house at all? Where is that occurring?
Right at, it was, just right at the corner, right across the driveway.
At the rear corner of the house?
I'd like this over here.
Please.
So the driveway comes to here, and this is where the 4-foot fence is gonna go to connect into my house. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the plan here, and then it was this is the 20 feet of fence that I'm looking for the, for this. The shield is all 6 feet, and this shield from here to here, 4 feet.
you can put in your 4 feet across your driveway. You don't need a variance.
Okay.
You can put in the 6-foot fence from the end of that 4 foot all the way back to your rear corner. No variance. The issue is if you're looking to tie into the neighbor's fence in that section, that's what your variance is for.
Right. So.
Why do you need that variance? Why don't you put 4 feet fence up there? You still have a secured backyard.
Right, well, just because there was already 6 feet fence there, and I wanted to tie into a 6-foot fence that is already there, and I felt that that was more uniform than 6 foot to 6 foot, 6 foot to 4 foot.
Gotcha.
And that is what that is.
Okay.
But from what I'm gathering, I think that tabling it. So I think can still, but I can still go ahead and go, would I be able to do that Memorial Day weekend? Would I have to resubmit another permit? And then,
You can build everything except for the 6-foot fence, 6-foot, 20-foot, 6-foot portion that's in question. Everything else that you've discussed would be no variance required.
okay, so what, I guess my question is, do I have to go to submit another permit application?
If you table this, it goes over to the next meeting. And then it's on you to, make that determination. I don't know how long it's going to take you to figure out, is that your fence, his fence, where you can put it up, and then you can be heard on that's not going to happen by Memorial Day.
So I'm not gonna be able to, so I guess that's my question, like,
Laura, can you?
Yeah, so the building department can issue a building permit when the permit is in compliance. So you could get a building permit issued for Memorial Day for the fence, for the 4-foot fence off the rear corner of the home and replacing the 6-foot fence in the rear yard. You would have to separate out that section of 6-foot fence in the side yard that you're requesting a variance, and it would require a separate building permit, which is at the least the base of $70. So you can take out parts of your building permit that are in compliance and receive a building permit for that, but you need a separate building permit for the stuff that you're still trying to undertake.
The piece you're seeking a variance for, you would need a separate permit if you proceed
so I
with
would
the.
just say, I don't wanna do that right now, that 20 feet, cuts it out, and then I would, like.
Then-
So just so you want the permit for the part that you don't need the variance for. You're going to submit a new permit application for that. And as long as you have that by Memorial Day, you can go ahead and do that. And then you want to table the other for the next meeting.
Yes, I table the variance, and I want to go through the 6 feet that I don't need a variance for, 4 feet that I don't.
But in the meantime, you're still going to need to do your investigation about that 20 feet.
Yeah. So I just won't touch the 20 feet that's there.
It still doesn't change the issue of that entire 6-foot fence. Is it on your property or his?
Correct, no, I understand that.
Okay,
I would have to investigate that, and, before I.
okay.
And Mr. Chairman, just from my perspective, I don't know that necessarily is dispositive. I don't want to lead you to believe, from my perspective, that is necessarily dispositive of your variance. Once you determine whose property it's on, that doesn't necessarily indicate that you're going to get the variance or not get the variance.
No, I mean, so I guess that's like if they have to move their fence for some reason, I don't, then I would not need a variance, because then I could just take out the fence. If, like, let's say they have to move their fence back to the rear of their house, and that's where the rear of my house is, like.
Understood. I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
I wouldn't need to come back for a variance, I wouldn't need that 100%.
I understood.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess.
Is that what you would like to do, to table it till the June meeting?
Yeah.
So you can proceed with your other parts. Just make sure you get the building permit for the other parts that don't require a variance. And we'll table the variance before us till the June meeting. And you don't have to, just so you know, if it's tabled, you don't have to pay a fee to come back before us. You just,
I don't think that,
correct, Laura?
If the board tables it, they don't have to pay. If they request to pay, I think it's typically 50%, so it would be $50.
Mr. Chairman?
Would you like me to ask if somebody would like to make a motion, Mr. Dolman? Or you just want to do it yourself?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask if you would entertain a motion to do that.
Would anybody like to make a motion to table this variance?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll. And again, just in case we've lost it in the last few minutes, we're voting to table the request for a variance. Please call the roll.
Mr. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Latife,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Antonikowski.
Yes.
Chairperson Ferrari.
Yes, so your variance is tabled until the June meeting. Good luck over the Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for your patience. Call the next case, please.
Appeal of Aaron and Mari Sachs for a variance from Section 220-13, Schedule IB of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskiuna as it applies to the property at 4315 Buckingham Drive, Niskiuna, New York, located in the R1 Low Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a 12-foot by 22-foot garage addition partially within the side yard setback. Section 220-13, Schedule IB requires a 20-foot minimum side yard setback. As proposed, the addition would be located 9 feet at the closest point from the side property line. Therefore, an 11-foot side yard setback variance is required. 12 notices were mailed, 0 responses.
You're extremely happy this is an offense case, right? Please give us your name and address and tell us about your request for a variance.
Aaron Sachs, 4315 Buckingham Drive.
Could you talk a little louder, sir?
Aaron Sachs, 4315 Buckingham Drive.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your request for a variance.
So my wife and I, since COVID, my wife and I now work from home. They closed our offices. So we have some friends and family from out of town stay with us an extended period of time. 2 kids and a dog. It makes it really hard to work in the house with everyone moving in and out and around and all the noise. So we need another room. We looked into options during COVID, but construction prices were just too high. Now that they've come down, we're following up with this. And, so what we want to do is have a garage addition, so we don't want to use the garage. We'll take the existing garage and make it 2 rooms. So we'll have the offices there. The plans on there, it's actually for 1 big room and 3 big mudrooms. This, room from the architect and different ideas. The mudroom will help sell building in the future, and we don't plan on using it now. We give more back in our garage, so I'm gonna use that small room, and the wife will have to bring it to our office. Tuesday, well, when I do tonight. So that's why we're asking for variance. We need that room. I know it's 9. Unfortunately, right now, the way our property sits, it's right by the property line. I think it's actually 1 foot over. We're 19 feet back now as it is. We spoke to our neighbors, none of them complained, or had any issues. Our next door neighbor, exactly as far as her, said the driveway should actually go out like this, so the distance keeps increasing. I do have a picture to help demonstrate that. I did walk around to my neighbors that were in line of sight and have them all sign it. That's some big sign sheet of paper saying they have no issues. They have no issues. Do I give that to you?
You can go ahead and give it to the board, but we will accept it as part of the record.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that covers it.
Let me ask you a couple of quick questions. So your current garage, which is then going to become the offices,
Yes.
is attached to the house?
Yes.
And then the addition is going to go, as I face your house, the addition's going to go further off to the left, correct?
Yes. And that'll be attached also.
Okay. I'll take a look at the pictures, but your plan in terms of the addition, in terms of how it looks compared to the house and the garage, is it going to be same color, same?
Our plan is after we get the garage, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's all right. Go right ahead.
Is to reside the house because we don't want it to be too proposed. We have the original 1969 yellow on the side, and it's so we want to modernize it. And this was a good excuse to go ahead and do that.
Okay, so ultimately, if the variance is granted and you build the addition, it's going to all essentially be the same exterior color and look the same.
Yes.
And based on your photograph here, which we're making a part of the record, there's no trees or anything. It's just essentially one open sort of yard area.
Yeah, the trees either taken down in the storm or multiple storms.
Okay. Other questions by the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just, we do have the photograph. I just wanted to get on the record in words as best we're able. If your application for this addition, for this variance for the addition is granted, if you're looking from where the addition is to your neighbor, as you're facing the front of the house to the left, what is in your neighbor's structure? What is it? Is it their kitchen window looking out at you? Or, yeah, is it someone's bedroom, or is it their garage?
So, no, the garage is on the left side of the house.
Yeah.
The two upstairs windows would be their kids' bedrooms. Our garage is not gonna go that high. We don't make noise now. They were initially, when we spoke to them, they were initially thought, hey, there's too much noise when you guys in the garage, and we're not in there at night. It's just, during the day when the kids are up. So they're like, yeah, we don't care.
All right, so the photograph that you've submitted that will become part of the record, does that accurately reflect the way that your house and your neighbor's house looks right now?
Yes.
All right, and for the record, it's not like their patio would be looking out to this addition, or it wouldn't be their kitchen windows looking into your addition?
No, so their kitchen windows you can't see on this picture would be further to the left.
All right, thank,
So it's their garage, the kitchen, living room, and the upstairs where the two windows are with two kids' bedrooms.
very good. And just out of curiosity, what would the roof of this proposed addition be made of? Just pretend you're a kid looking out the bedroom windows now and pretend that your application's granted. What would they see as part of the material being used for the roof?
The goal is to tie it in so it looks one continuous piece.
Thank you.
Do you have to change your driveway at all?
We'll probably need a variance for that to make it a little wider, I'm guessing. If not, I'll put down some crushed stone. And I don't know if I don't know if there's a certain size limitation, but that would be the plan. Push it out a little further so we can use that part of the garage.
So I'm sorry, I spaced this. The addition is now going to become the garage?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I show you.
please.
So right here is where we're playing up in the addition. This is the existing garage here. It's a split level house over here, and it's a big entranceway. There's the garage. This is where we want the addition. So this would be the two offices and a door going in here.
Okay. So just so you realize that and I don't have no idea, but I assume and again, it's a pie shape, so the measurements may be different, but if you have to expand the driveway to any degree, it may require a variance.
Yeah.
Does the driveways require a variance, Laura?
So this is just off the top of my head, but I believe that it's 33 feet or 33% of the frontage of the lots, whichever is less. So the only place that you would necessarily need a variance is if you were going to take that driveway and widen it all the way down to the street, and then that driveway was going to become like 33 feet wide, you can't go more than that. But if you were just going to leave the existing curb cut and then add asphalt to go into the new garage, it wouldn't need a variance. So my suggestion would be don't touch the curb cut to the road, and then you're good.
So we don't plan on doing that. You can't see obviously this picture, but in front of the driveway, actually about where that line comes across is a big oak tree. I like the oak tree there. We have one on the other side too, so I don't want to move that. So it would just be a small section, the car could go around and back down. It wouldn't go street side. I think that'd be too wide of a driveway. Just wouldn't look good.
Okay.
And just if I may, for the record, not to beat a horse here, but you submitted, which we're going to accept as part of the record, signatures of the neighbors, right?
Yes.
Which one of the neighbors is the neighbors across the street who will see this? If you could just identify their address, you don't need to identify their names.
So across the street,
Yep,
the 4316.
right, and stop right there, right? Did you have a chance to speak with them?
Yes.
Okay,
So
and what did they tell you?
make sure to say it's a home office so they approve it.
Okay. All right, and you were going to say something else. Is there another neighbor that's generally across the street in addition to the one you just? Yep, did you speak with them?
Yep.
Okay, what did they say? In sum and substance, good luck. All right, and they signed the petition? Thank you. All right,
And then there's one house I couldn't get a signature for, and that's because it's been abandoned for the past 8 years. It's the
yep.
one going up for auction.
Yep.
Um,
I did a site visit, so I know what you're talking about. Thank you. All right, appreciate your time.
Mr. Sachs, I do appreciate your quest for peace and quiet. And I can appreciate that, but what other options did you explore for the additions to the home?
The first thing we explored was actually making it the 2 stalls and then building up, and making a huge master suite, and that price was outrageous, and we bought a whole other house. So that was, we said, yeah, that's not happening. And we looked at the other side, and talking to the architect, it's too much money with the basement, having to grade and all that, just wasn't economically feasible, and have everything tie in. The other option was just my existing garage building up, but then to tie the roof in, so it's not 2 separate roof lines, and make it look like it's one piece. Between that and having to extend the chimney, because we still want to use that, it wasn't feasible, just a long stacked chimney with the house here, and didn't want to look right either. So like, all right, we'll just keep it simple and go out, and hopefully we can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions by the board?
If it helps too, if you walk both sides of my block, there's a lot of houses that are kind of close together on one side, so it's not really different than some other houses in the neighborhood on the Buckingham Drive. So I did look at that too, to make sure we wouldn't be the closest and stick out and, be a sore thumb. And also it kind of fits in because across the street, they expanded their house was bigger. Next to us, they went higher. So everyone's starting to modernize and make the house a little bit bigger. So ours should fit into that look and help bring the property values up versus keeping them lower down.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on this variance? Hearing none. And we had, other than the signatures, we didn't have any letters from the neighbor. Okay. Is there anyone that'd like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
with
Green,
your permission, sir.
you have it.
All right, I would like to make a motion that this variance be granted. The applicant has laid out for us his exploration of other possible alternatives and represented to this board that they were economically unfeasible. In addition to that, some of the alternatives that were discussed, perhaps in one estimation of a person would be not as appropriate as the one that the applicant is proposing. So it would appear to me that while the benefit could be achieved by other means, the other means would possibly, based upon the testimony given, not be economically feasible, and in any event, not be perhaps fitting in with the structure as it is, and as importantly, with the other houses as they have been represented to us, built, and as they sit now in the neighborhood. So is the request substantial? It certainly is. I mean, this gentleman in his application is asking the board to consider a very substantial request. However, given the fact that the request, in my estimation, from what I've heard, would not provide an adverse physical or environmental effect or change to the neighborhood. And given that it sounds like actually, it would kind of fit in with what's going on in the way the unique pie-shaped parcels, his not being the only one, but others in the neighborhood being the same. And also, I give a great consideration to the fact that the applicant has provided to us a list of his neighbors showing that they have no objection. And some maybe even be favorably disposed to this. And given the fact that what's being proposed also would not, in my estimation, based upon what has been represented to us, materially affect his neighbor's ability to continue to enjoy their property the way they've enjoyed it up till now. And lastly, while this is self-created, it's certainly relevant but not determinative. For those reasons, I would move that the application be granted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman, for the same, all the reasons just stated. And sir, you've answered all our questions, and we deeply appreciate that.
Any further discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Latif,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Daly,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Frary.
As someone who's been relegated to work from their home forever and ever, I sympathize with you and I vote yes on the motion, and your variance is granted. Good luck with your project. Call the next case. Yes. Thank you.
Good night.
Appeal by Sterling Homes Solutions, agent for a variance from Section 220-13, Schedule IB of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 80 Oakmont Street, Niskuna, New York, located in the R1 Low Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a 14-foot, 1.5-inch by 13-foot, 6-inch sunroom addition in conjunction with an existing deck partially within the rear yard setback. Section 220-13 Schedule IB requires a 25-foot minimum rear yard setback. As existing and proposed, the deck and sunroom addition would be located 18 feet 8 inches from the rear property line at its closest point. Therefore, a 6-foot 4-inch rear yard setback variance is required. The deck is constructed, or the deck as constructed is less. 10 notices were mailed, 0 responses.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience. Please give us your name and address and tell us about your variance.
Hi, my name is Rick Rainbow. I want my address and company's address.
Well, give us who you are
I'm the
with.
project coordinator for Sterling Home Solutions. We're located at 1 Barney Road in Clifton Park.
Tell us about the variance.
The variance, the homeowner, I didn't want to come tonight. Was looking to get a sunroom done where she could enjoy the back out deck area and not be hit by the bugs. She has a deck there now. I'm not sure if it was built, I was built with a permit, without a permit, with a variance or whatever. But apparently that already extends over the encroachment line. The sunroom, actually, plan would be cut off a section of that deck and then tuck a sunroom in next to it behind the house. And the sunroom would go another, I think it's 2.5 feet further than the deck currently is. It's on a lot that is heavily treed to the, as you're in the backyard to the left, there's, within 30 feet, there's a fairly high tree line. Behind it is open space, goes into a gully and then goes up to the back side of the KeyBank Plaza, I think, the Hanford Plaza. So there's nothing behind it. So she'd like to be able to put a sunroom there so she can get outside and enjoy the outside and, you know.
Okay, any questions by the board? So obviously nobody lives behind.
That's correct.
And doesn't appear to be, I know you said there was a tree line, but in terms of the backyard, not gonna have to remove any trees or anything like that.
No, in fact, as it is, I was kind of surprised when I found out that it had been encroached because from my measurements, the tree line actually is probably another 15 feet beyond the actual property line, and it's currently now cleared and grassy. So, part of her yard goes into that open space now. as a grassed up area.
Plan is to blend the existing structure with the new structure?
Yes. Yeah, there's a bump out in the back, comes out for dining, or the living area. There's a small fireplace bump out there already. Our sunrooms are literally all glass floor to ceiling. So it's glass with white vinyl extrusion between the glass.
Questions by the board?
Yeah, I'm just, I took a look from the front. I didn't go in the backyard.
Yeah.
So maybe you can help me out. I'm
Sure.
an opportunity with your own eyes. If this board were to grant your application, how it would affect, if any, the neighbor and her view of, say, the line in her backyard?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, the patio line?
Back there took all kinds of pictures, I
Yeah.
did measurements, I can put the stakes up, you'll see the pictures, showing where it will sit.
So what would that
The
neighbor,
only view it's gonna block from her, would be staring at her neighbor's deck. It's not gonna block sunlight, by the time the sun's blown up in the sky, that the roof of the sunroom would block sunlight, it's gonna be hitting that tree line.
yeah, yep,
So the only view you're gonna be cutting off would be view of your neighbor's backyard,
yep, yep.
you know? If you're sitting in your house, staring at your backyard, you're kind of creepy anyway, you know?
So thank you.
Yeah.
If you were standing in the neighbor's backyard and this variance is granted, how would it look different to that neighbor from what it looks like today? What difference would there be, if any, with what the neighbor would see if excuse me,
Your neighbor's backyard, she can see the side wall
right?
of this glassed-in sunroom,
Yeah. And what does she see right now?
a big bush on the neighbor's deck.
Yeah.
And this goes, 2.5 feet past the deck, I think it is now.
And just to build the record a little bit to help me and build the record a little bit,
Mhm.
what's the approximate distance of the two neighbors? I know the buildings are connected.
Yeah, there's what they call, I guess, a roof mate,
Yeah?
a term I wasn't familiar with recently when I had to get an HOA, approval.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that, because we put a mini split, so there's a heat AC system, so we put in a outdoor unit, want to make sure it's around the side, so that the noise, of course, it's so quiet, you can on top of that hear it, but they want to make sure it's around the side, so that the neighbor wouldn't even see it or hear it.
Yep. So I'm looking for just your best approximation of distance from, say, this application is granted, there's a sunroom, the person sitting in the middle of the sunroom to the next door neighbor sitting on, do they have a patio? Sitting in the middle of their patio or the middle of their backyard?
I don't know, do you have an aerial view? This is a sample of what sunrooms look like.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not looking for an exact
Yeah, I
measurement,
don't
sir.
know, the neighbors,
Yeah,
yeah, that's. the
there's a deck. So approximate for
Yeah,
us.
when I pulled the string to lay out the sunroom for the pictures, I had trouble pulling the string, so I actually had to pull it right to the center of that bush.
Yes.
It's only going out that much further than the existing deck now, that the line was actually coming through the bush there. And you can see the bump out, we were gonna come right off that bump out, the plan was, and take that window out and put a door in there for her so she can flow from her house into the sunroom.
I appreciate that. And I'm just wondering if you could help me out with just distance.
Well, I'm
Are
not
we
sure,
talking?
The neighbors, being housemates, it's gotta be fairly, a roof, it's gotta be fairly close.
Yeah,
It would be the width of,
just your best approximation.
The line between the trees is right here,
Yep,
okay? And the sunroom would come over to this line here.
yeah,
So you're looking at, I don't know, I think it's 8 feet.
yeah. Okay,
Probably a rough guess, 8 feet.
all right.
It has to be more than 12 because the existing section of
Oh,
that is
okay.
12
Yeah,
and they're not allowed to go closer than the existing section.
Okay.
very good. And just so in my mind, although I think you've said this, if this application is granted and you get your sunroom, it's not going to be any closer to your neighbor than the current deck, right?
No, we'll be closer than the deck,
To the neighbor?
yes.
How much?
10 feet probably from the existing deck now.
Yep.
Because the deck goes over to the chimney bump out. Can you go back to the chimney bump out?
Yeah.
The deck comes over this corner of the bump out.
Yeah.
The sunroom would come to this corner here.
Yeah.
The plan was to cut off that section of the deck right there.
Yeah.
And slide the room right in there for her.
All right.
It's
Yeah,
not a very big room. It's one of our smaller rooms that we build. We build a lot of big rooms for people.
yeah,
This is actually one of the smallest we do, you know. Whether you get a 13 by 14, but I take wall space out, it's not really a lot of interior space.
Yep.
But it is a room designed to be a year-round room. So you can be out there at winter time with a tree, and, you know, be out there in the spring with the breezes and the bugs. It's just
Sure.
a nice new environment.
Will you favor me to ask just one more question?
That's all you want, sir.
Thank you. Did you have an opportunity yourself to speak with the neighbor?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see the neighbor kind of looking at what you were doing?
I did not, no.
Do you have any information about whether your client had an opportunity to speak with the neighbor?
I think she said the client was surprised where it was gonna sit, something blocking her view.
Hmm,
My response was, is what view have you got on that side? I mean, you've got a tree line, you know, and there's nothing to see there other than your neighbor's backyard.
Right.
So, you know, it's not like it's out in the middle of something, but blocking a view to some beautiful scenic areas. Her yard is encompassed on two sides with trees,
got it.
you know?
I appreciate that. And I did do a site visit, like I told you, so I understand what I think you're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
All right,
You get by when I had the stakes and the flat and the tape, no, okay,
thank you.
okay.
Yep, appreciate your time.
Any further questions by the board? Anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on this issue? And again, we received nothing from neighbors. Okay? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion. We approve the sunroom. The applicant, you did a good job on presenting what your applicant trying to build here. I think the benefit can't be achieved by any other way from the best way you're doing it right now. Whether the benefit thought by the applicant can be achieved by some method which is feasible. So I think this is just to clarify it, it's only requesting a rear side setback. It's not to the side, just to make sure that this is clear. Is it substantial? It's about 6.4 inches. And again, there's no neighbors in the back. It's in the backyard. So it is substantial somehow, but it does fit in this picture for building a sunroom there. There's no complaint from the neighbors. Everybody's happy about it. And this is the best way they can build it for this house in there. For all these reasons, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion. We approve it.
We have a motion. I'm going to second the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Lataif,
Yes.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes.
Chairperson Ferrari.
Yes, for all the reasons stated, your variance is granted. Good luck with the project.
Should be happy.
Going to call the next case. Come on up.
Appeal by Eric Kohler for a variance from Section 220-4 and Section 220-13 Schedule IB of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskiuna as it applies to the property at 2225 Rosendale Road, Niskiuna, New York, located in the R1 Low Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a new single-family home partially within the front yard setback on Rosemont Ave, Paper Street. Section 220-4 states the corner lots, each street line shall be considered a front line. The property is a corner lot and is defined as front yards along Rosendale Road and Rosemont Ave. Section 220-15D, corner lot states front yard minimum shall be required for both yards facing the street on a corner lot. Side yard minimum shall be required of the remaining 2 yards for properties located in the R1 and R2 zoning district. Section 220-13 Schedule IB establishes a front yard setback minimum of 35 feet. As proposed, the house is 24 feet from the property line along Rosemont Ave. Therefore, an 11-foot front yard setback variance is required. 16 notices were mailed, 1 response.
Oops. The building department received a response from Anna Barito at 1133 Rose Hill Boulevard, objecting to the variance, and stating that they didn't approve of the clearing.
All set? Hi,
Hi.
thank you for your patience. Could you please give us your names and where you live?
Yeah, so I'm Harry Schellinger. I currently live in Schenectady, but we're here for the 2225 Rosendale Road variance.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your request.
Okay, so we're, looking, as you can see, for an 11-foot variance on, the side, which is considered a front yard setback, because of the paper street. And I'll quickly go through, a timeline. We actually, started the process of purchasing this land, and it was, the purchase of the land was contingent on a building permit. So this process started in October, and we started having conversations with the town in December, had several meetings from December to January 18th, with engineering, making sure we had everything on the plot plan that they were looking for. We submitted all of the detailed plot plan, our drawings on the 18th of January of 2023. And then I and my father met with the engineering department and building department. They had a few concerns with or questions, I should say, on the plot plan. So we took those questions, we got it resolved, made the updates. I issued an updated plot plan to engineering and the building department on February 9th, 2023. Received an email from Nick at the engineering department saying everything was approved. And then Eric Kohler, who is the builder and owner of the land, he got an email from the building department saying the permit was ready to be picked up. I picked it up and paid for it on February 17th. And then on February 24th, Eric closed on the land since the purchase of the land was contingent on a building permit. We received it, he closed. And then on the 17th of March, myself and my father met with Laura to go over some questions that we had about if it was a paper street. A couple times I was told that it wasn't, so that's why we proceeded with the regular 20-foot setback instead of the front yard 35-foot setback. So we had a meeting with her, and then we had the land surveyed, paid for that. Contractor was on site to clear the property and get ready to dig our foundation. And then I received a call from Laura on the 25th of April, saying that the permit was rescinded and that we had to stop work. And since we closed on the land, long leads, a lot of items, trusses, windows, custom beams have long leads, so we wanted to order those, so we placed all of those orders.
Why was the building permit rescinded?
Yeah, so the building inspector, I think at the time did not realize that Rosemont was a paper street and issued the building permit with the side yard setbacks. Once we did the research on whether or not Rosemont was a paper street, and it indeed was, the building permit was no longer in compliance. And once the building inspector knows that a building permit was issued in error, it has to be rescinded until the error can be corrected.
Was the building department aware of the fact that this sale was contingent on the issue of a building permit?
I can't speak for the building inspectors. That's the first that I've heard, but
I told them that.
yeah, so they may have known that.
This wasn't just made a paper street during this process, right? It is on the books as a paper street.
It is, yeah. And I don't disagree with anything that Ms. Otadi just said. The only kind of clarification is the meeting that I had with her was whether or not they could use the driveway, whether or not they could put a driveway on the paper street. So that request actually led to a decent amount of research from the department, and even bringing their request forward to the Economic Development Committee. And at that time, while we were trying to entertain a request to see whether or not a driveway could be put on the paper street, we realized that the setbacks were incorrect in the building permit as issued.
I guess my concern that I need to state and put on the record is absolutely nothing these people did wrong, right?
I would say nothing.
And in fact, the building permit was rescinded due to an error with the building inspector, with, who did the research on this?
I mean, the building inspector issued the building permit as presented to him, which showed side yard setbacks. So they do their due diligence when they're reviewing it, and they missed this one.
Okay, well, it's not due diligence when a paper street that's on the books as a paper street is ignored, maybe the wrong word, but is overlooked. That's not their fault, right?
No, I mean, they picked up and paid for the building permit in good faith, understanding that they were in compliance with the zoning code.
They also bought a property that's contingent on the issuance of a building permit, which was issued in good faith by the town and then rescinded.
Correct. It has to be rescinded when we find out that it's in violation of the zoning code, but all of what you say is correct.
You understand my frustration?
Understood.
First of all, you understand, I'm sure you couldn't have missed it, this two street stuff that goes on. I lived on a two front yard. It's a unique issue with he lives on a two front yard. It's a unique issue in the code, so that even though you live on a corner, and we've had people have 3 front yards, it's so you understand that you've got to be in compliance with the front yard setbacks more than other people do. That piece you got, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me right now, let's put the rescinded building permit aside. What has taken place for you folks at this property? I know you said you have ordered things.
Yeah, we've ordered, our trusses, our windows, and custom beams. Because the lead times were,
Obviously, they couldn't break ground for your foundation.
the lot was only cleared.
Okay. And right now, obviously, the sale has gone through and it's your property, but it's in limbo right now.
Yeah.
Questions by the board?
Mr. Chairman, I guess this is just trying to clarify the extent of the application as clarified by a letter, from council to the board. It appears to me that there are 2 requests that the applicant is making to the board. The first request, as I understand it, is to determine whether or not Rosemont Avenue actually exists as a paper street. The letter from the applicant's attorney classifies it as a unimproved right-of-way. And I think that was a prefatory determination that the applicant was seeking, whether in fact the board would entertain an application to overrule the building department's determination that it's a right-of-way. I think that was part of the existing application, as I understand it.
So it's a right-of-way or a paper street?
Is there a difference, I think, is the question.
Can we ask council to come forward, please?
Excuse me, could you talk into the mic?
Thank you for seeing us so quickly. I understand this is unfolded.
Could you just, for the record, identify yourself, counsel, please?
Melissa Cherubino, I'm the president of the town. Marrying her husband and Mr. Kohler was over.
We originally asked for an interpretation because the definition of corner lot talks about two streets. And of course, this isn't an actual paved street, and if it's proposed street, we understand this is a zoning map with that. It's listed on the tax map as private property because it's not town owned, it's actually privately owned, but it has the right of way. Local property instead of being landlocked otherwise. And so we're looking for both situations. First, an interpretation, whether this would be considered a corner lot based on the facts as they are. I know that Laura had mentioned that there's a definition of frontage that changes the dynamic a little bit because frontage talks about street right of way and proposed street right of way. And so, we still would like to pursue the interpretation stating that because street right of way typically is utility lines, those types of things, and also because we still see on the tax map that it's privately owned and it hasn't been used as a roadway since 1925 that we originally created, and usually after 6 years, so it's considered abandoned. So that would be our first request, does it actually meet the definition of a corner lot? And we'd have one street and one right of way created in 1925. It's no longer not used, it's never been approved, it's never been used.
It's only 100 years.
Hang on just a second. I know we've had this question come up with paper streets before. The town doesn't, because they're not an actual street physically, but the benefits of being a street, whether a paper street or a regular street, if it's a street, the town maintains it, right?
If it's a paved, improved street, the town maintains it. If it's a paper street, the town typically does not maintain it.
Well, I'm not looking for typically, I'm looking for actually. So the question I have is, if there's a determination that this is not, this is actually not a paper street, does the applicant lose any benefits? Does the applicant lose the possibility that at some time in the future, this could become a street? In other words, once it's determined not to be, if it's determined not to be a paper street, that it's just a right of way, do they lose something potentially in the future?
I would really defer that to Elena.
The short answer is that I don't have the answer for you right now. We're running into several issues with paper streets, not just with this application, but this application is unique because it is privately owned. So
The
with-
paper street.
Correct. So the parcel is not owned by the town. It was not dedicated and accepted by the town. The town has not maintained it.
I dealt with it. I know a lot about this street, the whole scenario about it.
No,
Information on it.
thank you. Hang on, okay? I want my questions answered first. So the issue that I have is, for these folks, I don't want them to give up a single thing, given what's happened in this case and the error that was made by the town. So I don't want them to lose a possible benefit by having this determination made, if it's made. So that's what I'm really seeking.
Mr. Chairman, that's what the applicant is seeking. That's their application, is for an interpretation that would determine that it is in fact not a paper street or.
I understand that, but if there's a benefit to it being a paper street or potentially future benefit to it being a paper street, I want to make sure they get that benefit.
I think the right of way would continue. What is being pressed out is whether it's an actual street currently used or whether it's a paper street, maybe the town owned it and it wasn't included, or whether it's a right of way.
Council, why don't you tell me why you think that this is a right of way and not a paper street?
For the violence who own the property based on the deed that it's a right of way for local use. Property owners along that stretch. Originally, the subdivision map, which Mr. Gore has, showed a number of properties. And you can see that,
We own we will own majority
by
of
the
the
last name
property.
was Otani, sorry.
Well,
sorry.
and that's my maiden name. I'm still in the process of changing it, but.
And so what's happened is you see hers is merged out, so the spaghetti lot, those were once 50-foot frontage, I believe. And so that this 1925 subdivision has changed, it's become merged. Most of the properties didn't want to retain that small lot size. Mr. The neighbor on Hedgewood, the corner of Hedgewood, and he has 2.5 acres for himself. And there are other properties like that. I think yours is one.
For 1.7.
So the initial request is, you want us to make a determination, is this a right-of-way or a paper street?
Correct, and if that matters in terms of the definition of a corner lot. Corner lot is defined as 2 streets.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is, and counsel, correct me if I'm wrong, but the code, section 220-4, which defines frontage of a corner lot, doesn't reference paper street versus right of way. It identifies existing or proposed street right of ways. So would we agree that this is a street right of way?
For that purpose, yeah.
So you would agree that the determination is kind of moot if you would concede that point. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And in the alternative, the applicant was seeking a decision on their variance.
Understood.
And I have drawings too, like if you wanted to see the front of it, and some other, we're not gonna build a house that's gonna stick out, gonna look like the rest. It's gonna fit in well, and I don't think most people on the street probably don't even know that that's a paper street. So I don't think anyone driving down the road would be like, oh, that looks weird, and they look 11 feet closer to that paper street. So I don't think it's not gonna have really an effect on anybody. The next closest house on that side is 220 feet away.
We had also submitted some Google Map photos, and the opposite corner of the Hedgewood is actually not meeting the front setback. So it faces Hedgewood, it's on the opposite corner, and it's a single-story brick front. Because the change is that you can go right away. An additional 8.9, almost to the retaining wall. And then if you measure the house and get out, so it's going to be an unusual find in the neighborhood. The other photos that we've offered, we're trying to show this one, this was the condition of the property before clearing started. Part of our argument is that it will fill in nicely on a main road. After they have a house here, like they have, and then the second is to hopefully keep the block neighbor, so that even if the area where the right of way is here. We have all those two areas. I'm not going to see anything new, but I think everything is going to have a negative impact on the construction of the home. And then, we have some photos of homes right on Rosendale that show we're pretty close together. Typical for the community in that section.
So just because I can't imagine I'm the only one that's having difficulty with this, Elena, tell me, if this is determined to be a right-of-way, no variance is needed.
That was my argument, but I think Mr. Holt had mentioned that there's a definition of frontage in the code that talks about proposed street right of way.
Yeah, Keith.
I don't know, what is it?
220-4.
20-4 defines frontage, and even given the applicant's characterization of what the town has deemed a paper street, it would still count as frontage.
Yeah.
So even if we get past that point, they would still need the variance.
The section defines it as a right of way, not as a paper street. So it defines frontage as a existing or proposed right of way.
The code defines it as a right of way.
Correct.
The town defines it as a paper street. Right?
Paper street by definition is essentially an unproposed right of way for public use
Okay,
or an undeveloped.
but help me with this. Who's defining this as a paper street?
The town has.
The town.
Yes.
So the town is using a definition that by its own code is improper.
I don't agree with that statement.
You just told me that the town code itself, that based on the frontage, this is a right of way.
Which a paper street can be as well. It's just a different term for undeveloped right of way for public use.
Okay.
Laura, but this is a private owned, right? So there is somebody privately owned that,
This is a privately owned.
right? So the
Right.
town can't really, this is private. It's not a town road to be able to make that decision.
What's the significance of it being private versus for the purposes of the definition?
Correct. The
Is
determination
there-
is that if it is a proposed street right of way, then it is considered to have frontage. This property already has frontage on Rosendale Road. It also has frontage on Rosemont. Kind of regardless of who's the owner of Rosemont, even if you look on the, on the tax map that the applicant provided, it's privately owned, shown as a parcel and labeled as Rosemont Ave. And the research that I did that I included in the packet shows that at one time, the town had looked at abandoning the entirety of Rosemont Ave, and they chose only to abandon between Berkeley and Mountain View. So the remainder of Rosemont Ave as a street that's on the official street map still exists between Rosendale and Berkeley, regardless of the underlying landowner.
Maybe it's just me. Why?
So because if I brought up a bigger map, Rosemont Ave actually services parcels beyond this one that would be landlocked if it didn't have a right of way. And one of the things, if you read through the research that was included,
I did.
yeah, the planning board recommended actually the town not remove any Rosemont right of way because it would landlock parcels. The town chose to remove a portion of the Rosemont right of way, but not all. And if the town had removed this right of way between Rosemont and Berkeley, it would landlock at least, I think, 3 parcels. You can actually see them on the tax map that the applicant brought.
And my understanding, based on the discussion here, is that whether we were to determine it was a right-of-way or a paper street, either way, it is frontage, which would be considered for the questions of the corner lot. Is that correct?
That was the
Understanding is
determination
at
of the
this
planning
moment.
department, yeah.
Okay. So,
And maybe I'm mixing apples and oranges. If so, I'm sure you'll tell me. They are able, if this is a privately owned, the paper street, so to speak, is privately owned.
Correct.
That's all that's privately owned. They have clear title to their property.
Yeah, they have clear title to their property. It abuts Rosendale Road, so they could access to Rosendale Road at any moment.
So Laura, Rosendale would be their frontage if the other one is owned by private.
Well, our code, which I know actually the zoning board, not regularly, but I would say once every couple years, looks at a property that we've determined has frontage onto a paper street. I can remember one on
Yeah, I
Mountain
remember
View.
one.
Yeah, and there was one over like near Pawtucket. So there are still properties, and the planning and building department consistently determines that those are frontages.
We had one off of Council Road a couple years ago.
Yeah, like maybe Rudge Street or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. Unimproved right of ways. But under the definition code, although it wasn't included in the denial, is really key to that because that definition of frontage is why we classify those as corner lots.
So just to summarize it, what is the town standing on that for us? Like, where's the town, according to the town, because there's no way we're gonna go and approve something that the town is not, doesn't own that property to make that decision on a private property.
Yeah, I don't think the town has any stance on the right of way other than that it exists. And by its existence, it creates two frontages on this lot, which was missed in the initial permit. And that was a mistake on the building department. It had
Right,
to
but
be
that
rescinded.
was in the past. Right now, we know that mistake has been found. So there's two frontage, what's
Right.
in front of us right now.
Correct. Yeah.
There's one on Rosemont and one on Rosendale.
Rosendale.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, at the sake of, if this application's granted, are there going to be landlocked parcels in this neighborhood?
No, it wouldn't have any impact on whether or not the existing Rosemont Ave could be used by anyone. That's either in deeds or would happen during a subdivision.
And just so I'm clear, and I'm trying to grasp this, the fact that the denial of your building permit was based on the fact that all of a sudden you needed a variance.
Yeah, all of a sudden, we didn't meet the front yard setback on the Rosemont Ave.
Understood, but did it change the scope of your project at all? In other words, you've heard already here people requiring, I can't build my solar room because I don't meet the setback requirement I need. Did your project change from when you were just had frontage on Rosendale to when you had frontage on Rosendale and the second Paper Street? Did your project change at all?
We already ordered materials for the home, the design has been done, the site has been cut, and I think that we're looking for a variance.
Well, I understand that, but from a practical standpoint, I'm not building my house, the house that I have to change the dimensions of my house. I have to change, I can't put my pool in. I can't do, I'm trying to find out what the practical effect of the changes.
Imagine it's returning trusses, it's probably difficult to do. I don't know
If the variance is not granted, then yes, it will have an effect. If the variance is granted, then
If it's not granted, then the house as you have it designed, you can't build. Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just question to the applicant. You're looking for 11 feet, right?
correct.
So how about in the back of the house? Can you move it 11 feet?
No, it's the, width of the lot is the same front and back. So I can't turn it, I can't move it front, back, side.
So if you move that to the back, what's in the back of the house that you're gonna build? What's in the
There's
back?
700 feet of trees.
They'd still
There's nothing
need
behind me.
The same variance.
We own the lot this lot is 110 feet wide
Right.
by 750 feet.
And I think to kind of answer your question, the paper street running alongside
The whole property.
So we would need the variance no matter where the house is placed.
So even if you moved it back 11 feet, you're gonna need a variance from the back.
Oh, yeah, because, yeah.
Right,
we
that's
see
why I'm
variance
trying to
on the
get-
side.
We still need the side variance.
Right, I'm
Yeah.
trying to put it on the record, so this way why.
Correct, yes, we would need a variance either way.
Okay, so the only option you have here is to make your house smaller if you want to eliminate the footage. Otherwise, you can't put it back and so on.
And attempt to.
Right, and you already ordered the windows, you ordered the material for that size. All right.
One of the things we
Okay.
have to decide is is there another alternative that you can get what you're looking to get that doesn't require a variance or a lesser variance? That's what we're trying to figure out.
And Ms. Schellinger, is that correct? I know there's a difference in married name where we haven't transitioned yet. I just want to make sure I was accurate. But from a practical standpoint, it would have a dramatic impact. You have to do re-engineering of the whole parcel. You'd have to get new architectural plans. You'd have to see if you could return all of the major structural components of your house. And I think from what your husband indicated, that would have a disastrous financial impact on you. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So from a practical standpoint, that is a large reason that there are no reasonable alternatives for you.
Are there any other questions by the board? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on this? Come on up, please. Give us your name, address.
Kevin Holmes, 2236 Berkeley Ave. I'm the actual opposite corner of Rosemont and Berkeley. I was dealing with the same thing 11, 12 years ago when I got a variance for to extend the garage out. So I did a lot of research on Rosemont Ave, since I have two addresses also. So between Mountain View and Mill Road, it's split by Berkeley. Mr. LaViolet owns that whole stretch. So where I own property on one side of Rosemont, I also own the other side of Rosemont. So they own up to 16 parcel. I own 5 feet of 16, 9, 17, 18, and 19. So it was very concerning for me when this land was questioned if that was going to be developed or not. Mr. LaViolet has land on the other side of Rosemont Ave also. He is 1179, I believe it is. Section. The other one on the property is. Anyways, he took off between Berkeley and Mountain View so they didn't have two separate tax bills. I looked into the same thing, but again, it came in as a neighbor street. I was told that that road would never get put in unless there was 100% approval by everybody that bordered that land. At that time, 12 years ago, that was Mr. Brewer, which he bought the parcel from them. Mr. Brewer kept the land that these people bought on the other side of Rosemont. Mr. Brewer passed away and his son sold the land. Before that, there was a for sale by owner sign right there. I already knew information about this, so I called on it about it. And it was Mr. Peter LaViolet, Mr. LaViolet's son. Both the parents have passed away since then. And now Peter has now passed away also. So now his wife is now, I guess, executive of all that. So I called him on that and questioned about it. And because I only know it's only zoned a 60-foot road. You can't build on anything less than 80 feet in the town of Niskuna. So I was questioning about that. He said, "Oh, Mr. Brewer will just give it 20 feet. Just go to the town and ask for that." I don't think it works that way. Next day, it was taken off. The sign was taken down. So I called the county. County didn't see a problem with putting the road in, so I was a little more concerned about that. Concerns I have about this is I noticed on the plat that they showed with the driveway coming in, is that going to be on Rosemont Ave? It's going to be before that. Big concern I have is, being that I like the wooded lot, and another gentleman is behind me on that side, is getting that land in. I have talked to all the people all the land that is bordering that is all owned by people on Edgewood Lane. So it looks like separate lots, but it's 5 different people, me being one of them. I know that would never pass because everybody doesn't want anything back in there. That's 100%. I'm just concerned that if a driveway gets put in there, what's not to say that later in time, nothing against you guys, oh, I want to make some money on this, let's sell off some of our land because you do have quite a size of acreage. What's not to say that that driveway is going to get extended for more land? That's just a concern I have if that goes through.
Well, hang on a second. What do you mean driveway extended for more land?
You can put up the plat or the view of the land, or the architectural drawing.
While we're doing that, can I just take a real quick break? Just give me.
Yeah.
We have everybody? All right. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem.
So we were talking about the building back there, the driveway and whatnot. I'm just looking for an explanation of what you're saying.
When I went through the approval from you guys, I did all the research, finding out about, I didn't want, with the land behind, it's all nice and wooded, and you have fox stands and deer all over the place back in there. It's kind of nice to have a nice buffer. I did a lot of the research, talked to Mr. Brewer when he was still alive, talked to Mr. LaViolet, I used to snowplow his driveway, so it's very, very well. The reason why I believe LaViolet took from Berkeley to Mountain View off the records and took it off the record so he had one tax bracket was also Mr. Lafferty, who lived 2 houses away from him, I believe it's 1179. He wanted to develop that whole area. So that's why LaViolet initially bought all that land, so that he could have it nice and wooded and not have to deal with more subdivisions back in. So that's kind of why I was like, I knew a lot of, when you guys were kind of questioning it, so I was a little concerned about that.
No, that's all right.
But then I had actually questioned Mr. LaViolet, the son, Peter, when he had put that for sale. But I was very concerned and talked to all the other people that live on Hedgewood Lane, that they're the other ones, 4 more, including me, that own land that would go up to Rosemont or on the other side of it.
But my question is, you made a specific comment, if they put a driveway in there, I'm concerned that it's going to,
Well, my concern was, by the picture, it almost looked like that driveway that was going in was actually what Rosemont Ave was. So I was concerned that they were petitioning to see if that driveway was gonna be actually on the Rosemont Ave road. Because if that's the case, then that's a greater chance that a road could get put through. That's just my concern with that. Does that make sense, or?
it makes sense, but I don't see how that can happen.
Well,
Right,
also,
I
I
just-
think the applicant has indicated that they're not putting it on the paper street. So does
That
that,
was just my question with that, because to me, this looks like the property line.
No, that's the setback.
Right, that is, if you look quick, that just looks like the property line, and this would be Rosemont. But now, again, you have the setback lines, but then you're down here. I talked to the county, I do something in the county, he drives by there every day. I was concerned if a road could get through at all. They said, yeah, there's no site issues, there's plenty of site visual.
Okay, well, that's,
Concerning, and I know.
it's no longer a concern?
Well.
Okay. Anything
I
else?
You guys on record saying we're never gonna put the street in anyways.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank
I'm just
you.
gonna give you information.
I
about-
appreciate that perspective. Anybody else that wishes to be heard?
Yeah, I just need to say something. I'm sorry to hear about the passing of certain people who I won't spread on the record, but in my younger days when dinosaurs roamed the earth and gas was less than $2 a gallon, I knew some of these people. So, yeah, so I just want to note my sorrow for hearing the passing of people I knew in my younger days.
There might be question about that road coming up though, because there's only one member left of that, his wife, Peter's wife. So I don't know.
I appreciate that,
May
but
see
it,
something about that coming up. So.
okay, it's not before us right now. So anyone else that wishes to be heard? Yes,
Can I turn in some maps for you guys to look at?
sure. We've got these as part of the record, correct?
And we'll leave this.
I think this will just help to demonstrate.
Hang on, before you say anything else, just so, because I need to just have you put your name on the record, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, Laura, you can take this one and make it part of the record, please.
There's another one.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Eric Kohler.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to be heard? I don't want to, do you folks have anything that you'd like to add? Seems like a long time since you got to talk, so. Anything else that you want to add?
The only thing I would add to is that it wasn't just the building department, engineering had seen the problem. I don't know if I had said that at the beginning.
Thank you.
But
All right. I am open to consideration of how this board would like to proceed. We have a number of issues which are in front of us, not that we have to proceed on all of them. So I am opening this up.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that the applicant has agreed that the determination or redetermination of the issue regarding the right-of-way and the frontage issue, whether Rosemont Road is a road for the purposes of this application, has been resolved. I think the applicant has determined that that was moot based upon an analysis of the code provision that identified rights of way. So I would submit that the issue.
Well, let's clarify that. Are you no longer seeking for us to make a determination regarding the paper road versus right-of-way?
I think, yeah, we agree that it's part of the definition of frontage.
Okay, so that's a non-issue for us at this point.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So that leaves us just one issue, which is the pending variance request.
Yes, that's my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
We had a few more comments, and they are covered in my letter. I've been told my letters are too long to read those.
Well, we'll make, the letter is part of the record, correct? Yes, the letter is part of the record.
Yeah, and for the record, I read your letter. Yeah.
I didn't find it unnecessarily lengthy.
We're open now to a motion if, and I, with the understanding that the paper road versus right-of-way point is moot, so that is not to be part of your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as requested. I find that the benefit cannot be achieved by other means, that after discussing with the applicant, there's no other way for them to build this house other than with the variance. I don't find that this is an undesirable change in the neighborhood. It seems actually that this does kind of slot in nicely to the way the rest of the neighborhood is. I do find this is a substantial request. And we would, I think, in just about any case, hold that an 11-foot setback variance is substantial. I don't see any reason to feel that this has an adverse environmental impact. And as is rarely the case for me, I find that this is not self-created. And on the balance, I would move to approve the variance as requested.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion for the reasons stated. I will say that it's rarely an application that I would say that to a certain extent, the application is self-created. And this is the rare exception to that rule, because everybody who's looking for a variance always has an opportunity to not seek a variance. So on some level, it's always self-created. I think this is a narrow exception to that rule. So for those reasons, the reasons previously stated, I second the motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Latif,
I'm going to vote no, and the only reason I'm voting no, I just don't want to set any precedent for future properties on that road.
Mr. Dolman,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Daly,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Green,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Frere.
I think what has not been said that I think needs to be said is to apologize to the two of you. I'm mystified. And I realize that mistakes happen, but this seems to be a rather unnecessary one that's caused you a lot of delay and expense and other issues. So you're probably not going to hear it from anyone from the town. I will preferably on their behalf apologize to the both of you that this has happened. Shouldn't have happened. Due diligence means it doesn't happen, but it did. For all those reasons stated, I'm going to vote yes on your variance. I wish you the best of luck with your project. And once again, I'm sorry that this occurred.
Welcome to Niskuna.
Before we adjourn, this is my last meeting. I'd like to thank the members of the board. It's been a pleasure working with you. I would encourage you to persevere. It is worthwhile. Do it on behalf of the citizens, the people like this who need our assistance and our efforts. And I would also encourage you as best you can to stay far away from politics. It doesn't belong in this venue at all. Please do that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you go, we want to thank you and for serving on the board and doing a good job for, as Laura said in her letter to everybody.
Here,
Thank
here.
you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you,
Do
Keith.
we have a motion to adjourn?
Keith, just before you adjourn quickly.
Second.
Oh,
Keith.
hold on.
Voice vote? All in favor?
No, hold on, please.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, I put it as the very second or third thing in the packet, but your June meeting had to be moved because of early voting.
Right.
So just make sure that you adjust your calendars. I sent that out to you, but it's on a star in your next agenda. Next meeting is June 14th, which is very early.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
You almost gave Brad. You still type almost gave the applicant.